Your Excellency, Madam Katalin Bogyoy, Ambassador, distinguished dignitaries and academicians, honored speakers, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to pay homage to the organizers of this conference, which is celebrating 80 years since the founding of the United Nations in 1945, shortly after the signing of a peace treaty between the belligerent states of World War II, as well as 70 years from the accession to the United Nations of the countries of Eastern Europe. I must say that the anniversaries of organizations are only meaningful if they led us to a deeper understanding of the events they have produced. The United Nations mission was to create international institutions that, through the rule of law, would ensure respect for democratic principles worldwide based on the demonstrated premise that it is authoritarian regimes that are the ones that cause wars. In the hope that these institutions would be able to instill a democratic consciousness among the world's populations, an international organization dedicated to education, science, and culture was also established in 1945 under the auspices of the United Nations, known as UNESCO. Unfortunately, true democratic regimes were only established in the West, while in Eastern Europe, communist dictatorships remained in place, continuing to commit crimes against humanity that ended up affecting tens of millions. These two competing systems remained separated for 4.5 decades by what was called the Iron Curtain. And an uneasy peace was maintained by way of the Cold War based on the threat of nuclear Armageddon. The Cold War concluded with changes within the former Soviet Union in 1989, thanks to the action of the peoples of Eastern Europe, who replaced criminal dictatorship with democratic regimes. It was the first time in human history that the transition from authoritarianism to democracy took place through a peaceful revolution and without subsequent revenge against the former oppressors. Unfortunately, with the invasion of Ukraine by the Russian Federation in 2014 and 2022, followed by the bloody events in Gaza in October of 2023, a second Cold War has been reunited on a global scale, once again under the threat of nuclear conflict. Who is responsible for the fact that today, instead of celebrating a success, we are commemorating a failure? I believe that our meeting must seek an answer in this question, an answer that does not focus solely on authoritarian regimes that openly proclaim the replacement of the rule of law with the law of force. I believe it is important to also analyze the shortcomings within Western democracies that have led to the deterioration of democratic consciousness and of the culture of peace. This refers, in particular, to the rift that had developed between the Western civilization and the Western culture, on which it has been built over centuries. Who then would be most suitable to organize and chair the debate? Then, in my opinion, Mrs. Katalin Bogyai, former ambassador of Hungary to the United Nations and president of the UNESCO General Conference between 2011 and 2013. I met Katalin Bogyai at the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy in Berlin, with the Academy for Cultural Diplomacy in Berlin, which I had the former honor of leading until 2017, led the Foundation for transforming the concept of soft power and smart power, which were limited to the principle of tolerance, so popular in the 1990s, into a new concept, cultural diplomacy that promotes dialogue based on understanding the others. As I have emphasized in all my addresses over the past 2 decades, the key term in cultural diplomacy is culture. In this spirit, I have worked closely alongside Mrs. Katalin Bogyai at the World Academy of Art of Science, an organization created in 1949 as the initiative of some of the great scholars and cultural figures of the 20th century, Einstein, Oppenheimer, John Bernard, Fleming, and Mnuchin, as well as those who later created other United Nations affiliated organizations such as UNESCO, Rab Butler, UNICEF, Ludwig Reichmann, and the World Health Organization, Arkot Ramaswamy Mudaliar. The World Academy of Art of Science, whose board I sit on, has tried to keep alive this express commitment of such notable personalities known for their achievement in culture, science, and art over the years, seeking to unite the academic elites from the benefit of our society and humanity as a whole. Unfortunately, during the same period, the theory of deconstruction has long been promoted among the academic elite. The theories of Foucault and Derrida, as fascinating as they are in the field of literature and art, was extended to the deconstruction of administration, politics, law, religion, social groups, and even the family. The deconstruction of our entire society became more pronounced to the point where the noble concept of diversity was transformed into adversity. Positive discrimination, which is essential for the inclusion of minority groups, has undermined the principle of meritocracy, especially in the university and academic milieu. The democratization of higher education has, in many cases, been replaced by the massification of higher education through a lowering of academic standards in an inflation of academic credentials that is seriously harming our society. University have partially abandoned their calling as alma mater by implementing regulations subordinated to financial profit, a development that has had the societal repercussions of replacing the foundation of the universal ideals of truth and justice of a society based on interest alone. In turn, the development of our information society has led to the replacement of critical thinking with the accumulation of information. The deprecation of the concept of the society of knowledge, so fashionable in the early years of the 20th century, has led to the conditioning of scientific research projects, funding on mandatory reference on vaguely defined terms or utopian goals. Lastly, the accelerated expansion of social networks has had the paradoxical effect of promoting a new type of agnosticism, which, as was the case in the Middle Age, may herald a new obscurantism. In preparation for my address today, I asked the young researchers of the Institute for Advanced Study of Levant Culture and Civilization, which I had, to ask artificial intelligence to generate an address on our topic today. The speech artificial intelligence gave, one that each of you can easily replicate in only a few minutes, is nothing more than a collection of empty assertions and phrases sourced from official documents and projects, which in the end neither help us understand the causes of the social failure are mentioned, nor offer us a way out of the impasse we find ourselves in. In my opinion, this is also an effect of what I could call the bureaucratization of culture and the loss in social influence that academic elites have suffered in favor of the new influencer social media. Yet what I find most serious is a resurgent cultural denial of the roots of Western culture through dangerous concepts and slogans such "no history, no culture." How was it possible to lose what was gained 3 decades ago when, over a period of 2 years between 1989 and 1990, democracy spread across a vast area from the Pacific to the Mediterranean with the collapse of criminal communist regimes? If we want an answer to this question, we must approach events from both a historical and cultural perspective. Let us remember how what seemed impossible 35 years ago became possible. The peaceful replacement of criminal dictatorship with democratic regimes, followed by forms of reconciliation that were proposed by the victims to the former oppressors instead of revenge. This revolution in collective consciousness was a result of a pedagogy of shared suffering. Would such a thing still is possible today? Our difficulty stems from the fact that our memory of the crimes against humanity committed by the dictatorial regimes has been lost over time and forgotten. There are too few survivors of the World War II left, while memories of the post-war period differ between Western and Eastern Europe. Those who have personal memories of the Cold War in the West are 40 years old. For Eastern Europe, those who have personal memories of the Cold War are all those who have lived through the last 80 years. In other words, if in the West the keepers of memory are the parents of the current generation, in the East they go back to their grandparents. And today the war in Ukraine is taking place in the very area where the bloodiest military confrontation of the World War II broke out and unfolded, followed in the same space by crimes against civil society during the Cold War. For today, Western citizens, no matter how much compassion that may have, this can only resemble the movies they watch at the cinema or television. But for those of us in Eastern Europe, it constitutes a vivid and painful reminder of their own suffering. If we want to find a way to achieve a lasting peace, which now seems almost impossible, we must devote our efforts to building a universal culture of peace. We must eliminate the culture of violence from the public sphere. We must focus on an education tailoring the spirit of understanding the other and extend that education lifelong, beginning in childhood and adolescence and continuing into adulthood and old age. I believe that the Budapest Conference can be a first step towards a true unity of nations for a lasting long-term peace, building our future together. Thank you for your